All right, well, welcome again to Caitlin, Mark, and Lori. I'm going to jump in right away with a question for Caitlin. So, Caitlin, in addition to just sort of briefly introducing yourself, could you start by summarizing the timeline of your chordoma diagnosis and treatments, like what symptoms led up to your diagnosis, what type of treatments you underwent, and what was the timeline for that?
Absolutely. Well, hi everyone. My name is Caitlin. Little background about me. I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm currently 22 years old, but I'm living in Boston at the moment. I'm going through my graduate program at Boston University. I'm pursuing a degree in child life and family-centered care, which was very inspired by my journey and my experience. But timeline-wise, so right around 4th of July of 2016, I started experiencing some pretty weird like discomfort in my neck. We weren't really sure what it was exactly. I had been playing volleyball pretty recently before we started going on some summer vacations, and we thought maybe it was like a pulled muscle, a pinched nerve or something. So we were kind of doing any sort of pain management that we could until right around the beginning of September, when I was like, something feels wrong. Like, this pain has been continuing for months. Nothing is making it better. We need to check out what's happening. So my dad, being a radiologist, was like, okay, like, let's just schedule an MRI. We'll just take a look. It'll ease everyone's minds. None of us thinking that there was any possibility that anything serious would be wrong. So then I had that first scan at the beginning of September, and that was when they discovered a mass, which originally we were told was a benign schwannoma, which I have now learned that that's a fairly common misdiagnosis for chordoma patients. So I had that first scan. We scheduled my surgery to have it removed over my winter break because I was in the middle of my senior year of high school. And just a few months later, around the beginning of November, the pain was unimaginable. I was missing school. I couldn't focus on anything. It felt like my entire brain was just like encompassed by this immense pain. So at the beginning of November, I had a follow-up scan where we found that the mass had grown 30%. So at that point, my dad was actually in the room when those scans were happening, and he moved my surgery up to the next week. So I came out of that scan and found out that I would be having surgery that following week, which was very emotional and crazy because, again, was in the middle of my senior year at that point. And so it was November 15th of 2016. I had my very first surgery, and that was in Arizona.
Can I interrupt for one sec, Caitlin? I think it's important too. In our workup, there was no biopsy or anything. It's still at this point, we thought we weren't sure what this was. So we didn't seek out a chordoma specialist. We didn't even know. We thought this was going to be a benign etiology.
Yeah. We had no idea. I was thinking I was going to go in, have this surgery, recover for a little bit, be right back to normal life, and that was going to be the end of it. And at the time, like, I knew they were going to be doing a biopsy of the mass to find out what it was. And I told my family that I wanted to wait until I was strong enough and like had recovered a little bit before handling any sort of news. So for 3 days, actually following my surgery, everyone coming into the room knew that I had cancer and I had no idea. So they're all coming in trying to be positive and uplifting. I'm just like, lots of things are happening. I had 5 titaniums, right? Titanium, Dad, is that right? Yeah. So 5 screws put in. So I was like recovering from this crazy long 8-hour surgery.
Yeah,
so
fused from C2 to C4.
Yeah. So I was just not in the headspace to handle any of that information. But my friends and family were all so strong and so supportive. They respected my wishes, and they didn't let me know what was kind of going on until the last possible second. So 3 days later, I believe it was November 17th, my parents sat me down, had the conversation with me. You know, they let me know that I had been diagnosed with cancer, that we were still figuring out the logistics and all of the details. So it was a very confusing time for sure. And that I would be going into surgery again the following day, where they'd be going in.
Yeah, with the diagnosis of some type of sarcoma.
Yes, that's right. So really, I was like a wave of emotions, but I was also like, okay, what are we going to do next? I want to move forward. I'm ready to fight this thing and do whatever I need to do to be okay, essentially. So then we had the second surgery, which went really well. And after that, it was kind of a whirlwind, lots of changes and different things happening. So originally it was what was it, Dad? Epithelioid sarcoma?
Yeah, right, an epithelial sarcoma.
Yeah, so we flew out to San Francisco, my parents and I, to meet with some specialists there. And literally in an elevator ride from one floor to the next, we found out that it was not sarcoma, that it was actually chordoma.
And the reason that happened, sorry, Caitlin, it's going to be
no, you guys jump in whenever. I forget some of the things.
No, that's okay. I was, as a physician, I was trying to like quarterback this whole thing myself. And I happened to call a specialist a sarcoma specialist in Boston. And he was like, you're a radiologist and you see a lot of imaging. You have no idea what you're doing. You need to go to a sarcoma center of excellence, have them review the slides, figure everything out. You can play a little doctor in the background, but, once you be dad more and let people who have focused their whole lives on this, figure what's out. So we looked around a little bit and settled on this sarcoma center of excellence at UCSF. My sister lives in San Francisco. So that's how we got out there.
Yeah. So after that, then once we had the correct diagnosis, then it was like figuring out our plan of treatment. We were kind of in this debate whether I was going to go the pediatric route or adult, because I was 17 turning 18 shortly. And I'm very glad that we ended up staying pediatrics. I think that was definitely the right choice for me. Yeah, no doubt. But we just weren't sure. And in Arizona at my hospital that I was treated at, they hadn't had a chordoma patient. Like my doctors were learning, and my doctors and nurses were telling me, they were doing research on their own to understand my diagnosis and the treatments I would be receiving. So we were just, there were so many unknowns. And then I don't actually know, I'd remember exactly how, Dad, you got into contact with Dr. Leach.
So what happened was we met with Samir Chioli, who is out at the Mayo Clinic and has some experience and had actually been trained for some period of time by Norbert Leach. And so we were kind of thinking, gosh, what are we going to do? Are we going to go all the way to Boston? Like, this is going to be so hard on Caitlin the whole time, trying to figure out how to minimize the impact of what's going on in her senior year. And, going to Mayo, which is 15 minutes from our house for whatever may come, seemed like the easiest route. And he and I, after discussion, there was a little piece of tumor that was left over at C3. And so what to do about that? The surgeons and everybody at Barrows were chemotherapy, and that was a shock, to hear that Caitlin was going to have to go through that. And then we decided to actually have another resection and go in and grab that little piece and come in from the front as well as the back and remove everything, kind of like they would have done had we known this was a chordoma from the start. We probably would have gone somewhere else than where we went and had somebody who knew what they were doing going in, because obviously your first shot's your best shot, and the things that all of us on this call know. So it was kind of miraculous. We went to Barrows. We were supposed to have surgery the next day. And somehow through our pediatric oncologist.
You had already reached out to Leach at this point, I thought.
Yeah, I think so. Leach was already involved in some way. And just that evening on the way home from the appointment, our pediatric oncologist of Phoenix Children's had a conference call with Norbert Leach and told him that we were proceeding with some surgery, which, Leach flew off the handle and was like, that's not what we want. That's not what the whole tumor board said here at MGH. They're making the wrong decision, So he and I had a phone conversation that night where I was in my courtyard of my garage courtyard about what to do. And we actually canceled the surgery and then got together. Norbert kind of was, Dr. Leach was directing with our local oncologist, her chemo regimen, because with poorly differentiated, he was under the hopes that intensive chemotherapy would actually shrink this and maybe take it away, keeping surgery on the table or radiation kind of down the road. So a couple of rounds of chemotherapy, and the tumor actually was getting a little larger and not smaller.
Yeah. So I started.
Go ahead, Keika.
Started again over such a whirlwind. I remember my dad and I were on the car ride home from that appointment, my pre-op appointment, like, this is the right thing. Like, this is what's best for me. Like, this is going to be great. And then Dr. Leach calls and is like, no. You're not doing this. Please don't do this. And so we owe so much to him. He was such a wonderful person to guide us medically through this whole experience. But I then started the process of getting ready for chemotherapy, which for me was a huge emotional experience because I did not want to lose my hair. I didn't want to do any of the things that happen with chemotherapy, but I knew that it was my best chance. So I was like, you know what? Okay, just have to accept this, move on. So I started chemotherapy. The very end of December, we celebrated 2017 in the hospital all together with my family, which was really fun, getting to at least have that time together. And yeah, so I did 4 rounds of chemotherapy at Phoenix Children's Hospital, and my follow-up imaging revealed that things really weren't changing. They weren't getting better, which was definitely disheartening to hear. But that was when we got back into contact with Dr. Leach, and we knew we needed to do something drastic. And that was moving me up across the country to Boston for 8 weeks to do proton beam radiation at Mass General. And so I said goodbye to all my friends, worked things out with my teachers at school so that I could still graduate and keep things moving on that end. And yeah, so we came to Boston, and I had the best time here. I was born in Boston, so it was fun for my parents and I to all be back in the city together. And so I did radiation in combination with chemotherapy, and I got to meet a whole new team of amazing nurses and doctors and child life specialists, which was really great and special. And then when I finished my time here in Boston, I actually took a 5-week break from treatment so that I could graduate, which was amazing. So I got to graduate with my class in 2017, and I got to give a speech at graduation in front of I think it was 2,000 people, which was crazy. And it was an amazing experience. And then I got to go to Europe on my senior high school trip, which was so amazing. So
Caitlin's a warrior.
I
so
did.
funny listening to you, Caitlin, because she's like, it was fun in Boston. We had so much fun being together. She doesn't remember all the other stuff, I guess.
Maybe that's good.
The crying, the nausea, the throat cancer, all of that.
Now we're at the point in the journey where we can look back on the good things, and the bad things are more dim, and the bright things are the things that stand out a little bit more. Of course, I would be lying if I sat here and said it was all flowers and happiness all the time. It absolutely wasn't. But looking back now, it's the positive things are the things that stick out a lot more. Like getting to go on that trip. When I was talking to Sarah, I was letting her know how we took 1 day off of treatment while I was in Boston so I could fly back home for prom and be there for my senior prom, which was a huge milestone. So just having that support from my doctors and letting me take some time off, a reasonable amount of time off, to be able to do the things that I wanted to do and to still try and live as much of a normal life as possible. And so that summer, the summer of 2017 was pretty challenging because, again, there just wasn't a plan. Every time we'd go in and meet with the oncologist, we were so when is this ending? What's happening? And every time it was, we don't know, we're not sure. And so there were some really tough doctor's appointments that summer where I had applied to college. I was ready to go to the University of Arizona in the fall, and I wanted that so badly. I remember my oncologist in Boston being like, maybe take a semester off. And my parents and I are laughing because it was in 1 year, out the other. I was like, no, that's not happening. I'm going to school in the fall with all my friends, just like I always planned. So that summer was kind of up and down until July. I had my 9th round of chemotherapy, and after the fact, it had already happened. We found out, but because of imaging, that was going to be my last round of chemotherapy. So I have been off treatment since then. And then in October of 2017, I was pronounced to have no evidence of disease, which was very exciting. I remember my dad called me while I was down at school, because I still went down to school. I finished chemotherapy. 3 weeks later, I went through sorority recruitment at U of A, which was a whirlwind. And there were so many challenges with going to school, but it was what I had been working towards that whole time. I was like, I'm going to make it to school in the fall. I'm going to be there. And so I did do that. And then I have been cancer-free ever since. I just celebrated my 4-year cancer-free anniversary this past October, and 5 years post-diagnosis in November. So I'm doing really well physically, mentally, professionally. I'm pursuing my passions here in Boston, which is so exciting. And I have such a personal tie to the city because my family and I really truly believe that, the treatment I received here in Boston is what cured me and saved my life. And so to be using my second chance at life to be pursuing this career that I'm so passionate about is just so exciting, and it's so fulfilling and rewarding for me and for my family.
Yeah, full circle in so many ways, Caitlin. And thank you so much for sharing all that. I mean, it's just, you're positivity is just so inspiring and infectious. And I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm sorry, especially that you went through it in your senior year of high school, which is supposed to be a time of so much celebration. And just, I can tell you're somebody who enjoys checking off milestones and achievements. And so to have all that interrupted, I mean, does sound like you were able to experience it anyways, but still lots of uncertainty during that year that was not deserved for sure. I'm gonna let my colleague Dan Freed ask a follow-up question about your treatment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Caitlin, it's really nice to meet you. My name's Dan. I'm the head of target discovery and translational research at the foundation. And so I was just curious to know what kind of chemotherapy or what combination of chemotherapies you received. And I guess as a second part to that, did I understand correctly that you didn't respond at first and then maybe you switched to another different chemotherapy regimen in combination with radiotherapy that did work?
So Dr. Dad, that's
You got that, KK? I was going to ask. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, I remember some of it, but most of it was the first inpatient and outpatient in the beginning was a combination of doxy and doxorubicin and ifosfamide were the two main combination drugs. Etoposide was added later on, and those were the three chemos. There was one other one towards the end.
Yeah, I did ice over the summer. I know that
ice after radiation. Yeah.
Right, ice.
But yeah, correct in that at the beginning with the doxorubicin and ifosfamide, I was not responding. Then we did the radiation in combination with ifosfamide and etoposide, right? Is that correct? And then over the summer was done with radiation and added.
Yeah, I'm forgetting what the C is.
I'm not sure what the C is, but it was ifosfamide, etoposide, and.
Is it carboplatin?
Yeah,
yes,
that was it.
Yes, Josh.
That was it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Josh.
Yes, that's correct.
Carboplatin, yeah. That really wiped her out. It was really depleting her. And at the end, she was just having longer times recovering between chemos. And that's when they finally said, okay, this is enough. Like, this isn't doing really anything anymore. And we're going to stop.
But everything was run through Norbert Liebsch. There was great contact and communication between Phoenix Children's and Norbert's office in MGH.
Gotcha.
And David Ebb was our oncologist, Dr. Ebb at MGH.
They kind of have a sense based on the sequence of the treatments, what may have been driving the regression, whether it was the carboplatin or the radiation, or was it hard to say?
My sense is it was the radiation and Dr. Liebsch's plan that he put together. It was really out of hand. I mean, it was really amazing. He took me up and showed me the maps of where they were delivering the radiation and setting up a firewall and all of this amazing stuff. My firm belief is that it was the radiation that was the primary driver. Whether you guys know much more about the research than I, but maybe if there was a synergistic effect between the radiation and the chemotherapy, that probably was there somewhere, but I believe without the radiation, it wouldn't have been successful.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Great question. Lori, I am curious for you, what was your experience like during this time of Caitlin's diagnosis and treatment as a mom of a patient? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I kind of took the role as Caitlin said, when she was diagnosed for 3 days, none of us could tell her that she had cancer, which was a feat within itself. So I kind of took the role of just being cheerleader mom, and Mark was more of the medical side where he was doing all the research and looking into everything, and he would let me know what I needed to know. Caitlin was very adamant about not knowing
any of the
numbers,
statistics.
no statistics. She just wanted to focus on getting well and surviving and pushing through. And so I kind of just took that route because I know me, and I know that if I knew the numbers that it would bring me down and I couldn't be as positive. And so I kind of took cheerleader and I just focused on Caitlin and my other girls. We have 3 younger girls. So I was trying to do that and manage it. It was definitely challenging. I'm a very emotional person over just being a mom in general. So I just tried to focus on being positive and just be there for Caitlin. And Caitlin, you know, as you can tell, she's easy to be positive around, because when you're getting down, she's like, Mom, it's going to be okay. We're going to be fine. You know, okay. You know, so I would just take her lead and we would just go, and we, you know, there were definitely very dark moments when, sorry.
Take your time.
You wish you could take the place for your child, take away all that pain. But again, we made it and managed to have fun. We would go into appointments, we would laugh and joke, and Caitlin kind of took the lead and I followed her, and I just, if she wanted to go to prom, I was going to make sure she went to prom. If she wanted to go to Europe, I was going to make sure she went to Europe. And I feel that the mental part and the emotional part of your cancer journey and any cancer is just as important as the physical. And so I really pushed that for her. And I made sure that we made sure the doctors didn't talk about numbers or anything like that. And we really focused on her treatments, keeping her well during between chemos, getting her in when she needed to get in.
I will say, just let me add one thing in that, you know, I'm, you know, Western trained medicine, and Lori believes in a lot of Eastern philosophy as well. So we did have a naturopath involved who was doing a lot of things. Again, I was freaking out about all of that because I didn't want anything going in her body that Dr. Leach didn't say was okay. So he would review everything and felt that it was okay. So we did some naturopathic stuff, which Lori handled that part.
Yeah, that's right. I had a naturopathic oncologist. And so Caitlin would go sometimes between chemo treatments and get infusions that would just help build up her immune system. And we had her on some different supplements that we worked on. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that helped or not. I felt it was just something to add to her to keep her healthy. She would do these things. Caitlin would like get these like things with like, we were here or in Boston, and she would start getting a fever because she was what is it when you become neutropenic? And she was like, my fever's going to go away. I'm going to be fine in the morning. And sure enough, she would wake up with no fever. We wouldn't have to go to the hospital. We only had to go to the hospital once when she was neutropenic, right? And that was like at the very beginning when she like lost her hair and everything. So it was unbelievable. I mean, her mental like state at that time and how she was able to visualize and do all these things was really incredible. But it really, you know, I spent pretty much every day with her. So there was all these like, as hard and horrible as it was, there were so many blessings and like people that came into our lives that were so helpful. Obviously the Chordoma Foundation, Mark was very involved. And so he was really on top of that and getting support from that. I don't know if at the time that you guys had a support group when Caitlin was going through Chordoma, I don't think you did. And so I know when we went to the conference
2017, I think, in Boston.
No, it wasn't 2017. It was
2018.
2018. I love that you guys have that now, because I would have loved something like that, because that was really, I would say that was the one challenging thing for me, was just not having like other moms or parents that I could talk to that were going through the same thing, because there were so few pediatric patients at that time. So that part was a little challenging for me. And I didn't have, like when we were in Boston, I didn't have a support group. I mean, you just kind of met parents in the hospital that you would talk to about things.
Many with different kinds of cancers.
Yeah, all different kinds of cancers. I mean, no, I never met anyone until we came to the conference with chordoma, and nor have we yet. So, but it was, you know, it was just, I had this time with Caitlin. Obviously, we have an incredible bond from that experience. And we have like certain things, we listen to certain music, we have fun, we have a lot of fond memories. But I have to say, these kids are so freaking resilient and amazing. And any of the kids I've met that, we've become really good friends with a group of friends at PCH. And when your kid is that strong and brave, you have no other choice but to do the same thing. And that's the path that I took, to like help her get through it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lori. And I appreciate that you've already touched on this a little bit in terms of what sources of support would have been more helpful to you during that time. Is there anything else that you could think of that the Cordoma Foundation could add to our offerings for parents that would have made your journey a little bit easier then?
I know one, I think, and that is, I think, like Lori said, this is like the craziest journey ever, and it's really circuitous for everybody. No path is ever the same. And the one thing about Cordoma being so rare, we have just felt like guinea pigs, and we were just coming into this so naive. And so to have the earlier you can get a mom or a dad or anybody, a caregiver involved, talking to other people who have been even a mile down the road, is like, that's probably the most helpful thing. So the earlier you can get to somebody, the better. And I was really lucky, and I'm not sure exactly how this happened. A neighbor actually said, there's a Cordoma Facebook page, a neighbor in our neighborhood.
Who?
Debbie Breyer.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So somehow I connected with Chris Jones, who many of you may know. And he was like, he really helped me a lot. And he and I are still friends today, and email back and forth every once in a while. But I mean, he had already been to MGH with his daughter. I mean, he had already, so to have like at least one person, and they don't have to be a physician. He wasn't, I was, that was immense for me. So that would be my message. The earlier you can find somebody, and even because they may be reluctant to reach out to these people, because it's going to benefit them in ways that they can't imagine.
Yeah, that's really helpful feedback. Thank you.
I also, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I also
go ahead.
really enjoyed the conference. It was really great for me. I was nervous going, I think, just because I wasn't sure what it was all going to be, but we met so many amazing people, and it was just great to see the enthusiasm and the effort that's going in, because obviously your goal as a parent of a child with chordoma or any cancer is to find a cure, because you just don't know what lies ahead for you. So when we went there and I just saw everyone working so hard and all the effort that's going into it, it was really mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
I was taken aback in such a beautiful way. And
in particular, the breakout discussions where you got to meet people on a much more close knit level, as opposed to a giant room. Those were great.
And so it was wonderful, that part. And then obviously COVID came, and well, it hasn't happened again, but that was super beneficial. And I would definitely go. I need to partake more on Zoom and do more of that. And I'm willing to do that. But I can't wait for it to be back together like that. Because just when you're in a room with all those people, it's just a different energy, obviously, as you know.
Yeah, you all have this common bond thread that like nobody else has.
Yeah.
Sadly, but it's there.
Yeah.
But it's positive.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can't wait
It's
to
so
get
good to
those
hear.
started.
I remember meeting you guys there, and just the energy and enthusiasm that you brought then, even so close to having gone through it. I think that was infectious, and I know other people really benefited from that. So we'll be back in Boston in 23. So mark your calendars. You don't have to wait too long, but we're really hoping, circumstances in the world permitting, to do a conference next year as well. And that'll most likely be in New York, although to be confirmed. So stay tuned. We'll definitely keep you posted.
Wonderful.
Great.
That's wonderful.
Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Caitlin, how about for you? Could you tell us a little bit about what resources or sources of support you found most helpful and what you wish you'd had more of?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you can see, my parents talking about me, now I have to talk about them, because they're talking about how incredible I am, but oh my gosh, they were even more incredible in my opinion. But for me, leaning on my family, I was so fortunate to have a family unit that just promoted an environment where I could heal, because they gave me every opportunity and chance to just get better. Essentially, they were there to support me wholeheartedly. I remember my younger sisters being like, "Oh, do you want us stay home tonight? We can hang out." And I'm like, no, go live your lives. Go have fun. Please don't miss out on things for me, please. But they were so willing to do that, to compromise and to sacrifice for me, which was just the most unbelievable and amazing thing. And it brought our family together in the most unique and special way. But then, you find your second family at the hospitals with the nurses, the doctors, the child life specialists, the other children and families that you meet while you're going through that experience. And they were all so supportive and really gave me the opportunity to feel like I was taking part in my own care. Like, they listened to what I had to say. When I was asking questions, I was never looked down upon. Like, I felt supported, and like I was the main member of the team, which is like, I feel like how it should be. Like, the patient should be the main member. Like, we should be the ones that are as included as possible. And so I was really grateful to have that support from my healthcare team, both in Arizona and here in Boston at MGH. And for me, which, I mean, this has kind of progressed my professional aspirations, was child life was huge for me and made such an immensely wonderful positive impact on my experience. What I loved was that they tried to give me every opportunity to feel normal. And when you're going through this experience, that's all you can hope for and all you can wish for, because you lose control of so much that just getting back the smallest ounce of normalcy feels like the biggest deal. Like, I remember being at Phoenix Children's and getting movie tickets. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. That's going to be so fun. When I'm not immunocompromised, I'll go to see a movie with a friend. And then here in Boston, I got to go to 2 Bruins games, one with my mom and one with my dad. And just to get out and do something that wasn't hospital related, that was just something I would do with my family on a normal, ordinary day, was super helpful for me in kind of maintaining my emotional and mental well-being, which is just as important as my physical. But yeah, I mean, I was super fortunate to have the most amazing resources and support. Sarah, I know we talked a lot about, in being a survivor and in my survivorship, I've relied a lot on being in therapy to kind of help me process everything that I went through, because, you think that when all the treatment ends and all of that is over, that you all of a sudden are back to that same person you were at the beginning and your life just goes back to normal, but that person and that life just doesn't exist anymore. So it was kind of taking some active steps for me to, let my parents know that I was not doing well, that I needed help, that I needed to really process everything that I'd been through. So that has been really beneficial for me as well. And coming to terms with everything that happened to me and trying to move forward in a positive way, and how I incorporate my experience into my identity and who I am, because it is a huge part of who I am, but it isn't the only thing about me that is important. Like, there are lots of other things. So it was kind of figuring out how to incorporate that into my identity when, while I was going through treatment, all I was a kid with cancer. Like, that was it, because that was my everyday life. So those were 3 super big resources. So my family, my healthcare team, and then pursuing therapy after treatment. But I was so fortunate and so lucky to have a huge community around me that just lifted me up. And we had a Facebook group that we made when I started going through treatment, because my parents were just getting overwhelming numbers of texts and questions about how I was doing. So we made update posts on this Facebook page where people would comment, and we would say that I was getting a scan the next day, and there would be hundreds of comments of people saying that they were praying for me, that they were thinking of me, sending me positive thoughts. So I was so lucky to have just a worldwide community that was supporting me and sending me positivity. And I think that there was so much power in that. But I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones. I know there's so many kids and so many families out there who do not have those resources, who don't have that kind of support, who don't have the opportunity to have this healing environment to go home to when they leave the hospital. So I acknowledge that, and I know that I have been fortunate to be able to have a healing and supportive environment everywhere that I went while I was going through that process and every day since.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything that you could think of that you wish you had had that wasn't available to you?
I honestly can't think of anything. I really think that my support and resources were so well-rounded. I wasn't at the time of treatment very involved in the Chordoma Foundation, but my dad was relaying a lot of information to me. When he'd see like a positive story, he'd come into my room and be like, oh, look at this person, like this person's 7 years out, or he, like, every positive story he could find, he was relaying to me. And And then, yeah, I mean, I feel that I really exhausted every avenue of support and resource that I could. While I wasn't connecting with chordoma patients at the time, I was connecting with so many amazing teens at the hospital I was doing treatment at. So that was such an amazing experience to have them, at least, even though they couldn't understand the chordoma aspect of it. We were all going through chemotherapy together, so we all knew what that meant. We were all in high school. We knew how that was impacting us. So I really do believe that I took the opportunity of every resource that was available to me, and there really isn't anything that I felt was missing support-wise from my experience.
Yeah. You're a unique kid, Caitlin. I mean, the challenge for this team is how do you reach the kids and the families that aren't so open to everything, you know, that you are. It can be a challenge if you're not as receptive to those child life specialists and don't want to learn how to play the ukulele or don't want to paint or, you know, whatever. I mean, you had your days, but like overall, so you really sucked everything out of it that you possibly could. But that's certainly not always the case, as I'm sure you all know.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, every kid, every family is unique and different. And so everyone approaches this in a different way. So I think that it's just important to offer the resources and encourage families to accept them. But I mean, you can't force a family or a child to accept that help. And I think for a lot of people, it's hard to accept help. But I think that as someone working with families that are going through these experiences, just offering them and re-offering them again, even when they say no, maybe one more time, just to see if maybe something changes down the line is something that can be super impactful and beneficial.
Yeah, you just have to keep trying, I guess. Don't you have to introduce a food to a kid like 18 times before they actually might like it, something like that. I remember reading that.
I also feel too that in my experience at the end, after Caitlin's treatment, I kind of was like, I don't want to talk about cancer anymore. I don't want to deal with chordoma. I just want to like try to be like recover from all of this. And so I found that I distanced myself a little bit that first year, besides going to the conference, which actually kind of inspired me to like give back in a sense. But it took me a year probably since from the end of Caitlin's treatment, getting her through her freshman year of college, which was really challenging, to like say, okay, what now? Okay, I feel like I've recovered a little bit. What can I do to give back? And now Mark, on the other hand, got very involved with the foundation and was helping so many people, you know, some local people here in Arizona that were diagnosed, some kids that were diagnosed, and really reaching out to a lot of the chordoma people. So he kind of took the opposite route, I feel, and maybe that was healing for him. So I think with parents too, it kind of just, when you're done, you're kind of at different places and you have to heal sometimes different ways. Now that I'm removed from it, I feel like I volunteer for a family advisory council at Phoenix Children's on the CCBD floor. No, not CCBD floor. And then, so I feel like I'm giving back in a sense that way, but I feel more like rejuvenated as well after 4 years to like participate more with chordoma. It was just like I needed a break from it all. Yeah, that was my personal experience.
Yeah, this was really, really terrible. And so when you feel like even though Caitlin's has a 15-year follow-up and scans coming up on the 22nd of December, you know, you want to kind of, part of your psyche and your mind just wants to put this all behind you. And I love the foundation, but at times you don't even want to think about it. You almost want to pretend that never happened, you know, in a way.
Sure.
Sometimes it feels like it didn't.
Yeah, sometimes. But I think, again, I was without Chris Jones, I'm not sure what I would have done personally for me. So I tried to recreate that for other people, that since I was active on the page, people would reach out from Wisconsin, from Australia, from Canada, wherever. And of course, I always prefaced it with, you know, I'm a radiologist and a physician. And these are things I never gave, you know, I gave some direction, but never took the place of a treating physician, you know, ever. Be kind of more of support. And this is navigating the craziest kinds of rapids there are. And to have a guide to like even give you the littlest bit of information or somebody you can lean on, for me, was the most important thing, besides my medical training and early intervention, you know, surgically and those kinds of things. But support emotional wise, that was number one for me. Everybody needs a Chris Jones on early on in their journey.
And also the scariest thing is that if it wasn't for Mark, when Caitlin was originally diagnosed with epithelioid sarcoma, had we not gone to San Francisco, we would have treated her
way lower dose radiation in the 6,500
Yeah.
range. I mean, she had a whole treatment plan set up at Barrows for a sarcoma, which wasn't nearly the level of radiation required to try and control this tumor. And
so the outcome would have been significantly different, and sadly, probably not as well. And so that is really scary to me, because
it's almost luck. Sometimes
like
it's
what
luck.
happens to the regular, the people that don't have a doctor in the family that say, okay, oh, that's what that is. So because chordoma is so rare, it's, gosh, it's scary who knows how many of these people have been misdiagnosed, with other things
For years.
Right. So I feel like you guys getting out there and hopefully spreading the word is helping, other doctors, pathologists, whatever, realize, the significance of properly diagnosing these people.
Absolutely. On the topic of diagnosis and misdiagnosis, I want to give the opportunity for my colleague Shannon to ask a question.
Hi guys. I wanted to ask about the diagnosis.
Hi, Shannon. I know you.
Hi, yeah, you do.
How are you?
It's really good to see you guys.
Yes.
So with the diagnosis, and this is something I realized I didn't know about your journey, is at what point, it sounds like as soon as they knew you were told it was chordoma, you were also told it was poorly differentiated. Is
Correct.
that right?
That's right.
No.
Oh, wait. We sent the slides to somebody had recommended, and I'm forgetting his name, but Fish, what he calls him, Fish. He's a pathologist in Boston, in the Boston area. Forgetting his name.
Okay.
But somebody said, send the slides to him. And he was the one who I think graded it most precisely as poorly differentiated. It was definitely chordoma, but then what kind, and he was a great factor in really deciding that, which then the slides were also at MGH. And then so Liebsch and his team also agreed with the diagnosis.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know, because then when Caitlin was diagnosed, poorly differentiated wasn't recognized officially yet as a subtype, and we were still learning a lot about it. And I think we still are learning a lot about it, but yeah, so that understanding kind of how that happened, and to the point about getting misdiagnosed with the wrong type of tumor altogether. But then when poorly differentiated isn't diagnosed at the beginning, it can throw some speed bumps in there.
100%. Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Good to know. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Thanks, Shannon. That's a good question. Caitlin, you've mentioned a couple of times in this conversation and in our past conversations, your experience, the support you received from your child life specialists when you were going through your treatment. And I know that's influenced your plans for the future. So I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about that, maybe starting by explaining to people who might not know what a child life specialist is, and then going from there.
Absolutely. Well, describing a child life specialist has been like the topic of my entire semester of grad school. So I should be good at this by now. What'd you say?
You should get an A right now.
I hope so. So basically, a child life specialist works to meet the individual needs of the child and the family, and that can be through a multitude of different services. That can be preparation, education, coping support, social support, connecting people to others. And it's just the most incredible and amazing profession that I had no idea existed until I came into the hospital setting as a teen. And just, I don't know, there's something about the child life specialists in the hospitals, if you ever have had or have the opportunity to observe them working with children, it's just the most incredible thing. I remember sitting in the clinic at Phoenix Children's one day, and our child life specialist in the clinic came out, and you look around in the waiting room and every single kid's face lights up. Like, they are so excited to see them and so happy because they know that this is a person who supports them, who is there to make sure they have fun and enjoy themselves. And that when I knew that I wanted to work in the healthcare setting and that I wanted to give back in some way to this population that I had just been a part of, I was like, that is the person on the healthcare team that I want to be. I want to be the person that lights kids' faces up, that is there through really hard times and makes the hard times a little bit easier, just like they were for me. And, you know, over that summer when things were really challenging and really hard, we had a doctor's appointment where my mom and I were we were a mess. It was so much uncertainty that it was just so overwhelming. We couldn't handle it. My mom and I were just sitting in the doctor's office crying. We just didn't know what to do. And our child life specialist had come in, the child life specialist on the clinic, and she just sat there. She wasn't giving advice. She wasn't like trying to say she felt sorry for us or anything. She just sat there while my mom and I bawled our eyes out and just talked about our frustrations and our anger and all the things that were bothering us. And she was just a hand to hold and to support us through that process. And like I've touched on and my parents touched on, for me, like the emotional, mental aspect of treatment and diagnosis and fighting cancer is so challenging. Yes, the physical is hard, but the mental state can go so up and down so fast. And there are so many things that as a teen, you're processing these big things that are like things that teens aren't supposed to be thinking about. Like as a teen, you're not supposed to be thinking about like if you're going to live to make it to graduation. Like that's just not a thing that normal people are thinking of. So when you're processing these big emotions, to have someone there who is solely dedicated to that part of your journey is so important. And they were huge advocates for me and really empowered me and encouraged me to take part in my own care and to advocate for myself and to not just sit back and like let my dad handle all the medical information. I'm just sitting there and I'm just receiving it, like to respond to it and to ask questions. And that was really, really helpful for me. And they also helped in creating like such a strong community for me and connecting me to other kids. Like when we went to the Bruins game, we were in a box with a bunch of other kids. So I got to meet other kids that were being treated at Mass Gen at the same time as me. Obviously, like I was halfway across the country. I had no friends here. I was just receiving treatment, spending every single day with my parents, which I love them. It was still very fun getting to do that. But I had no people my age that I was interacting with. So they really helped to create that sense of community. And it was actually here in Boston when I was receiving treatment at Mass Gen that the child life specialist in the outpatient oncology clinic, I was chatting with her and I was like, I know I want to go into healthcare now. I don't want to be a business major anymore. I want to do something like working with kids. And she was like, oh, Caitlin, you would be an amazing child life specialist. You have the personality for it. You would be so great. You're so bubbly. It'd be perfect for you. And the second she said it, I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not think of this before? Like, this is what I am here to do. Like, I am meant to be in this profession. There is just nothing else out there for me at this point. And so I kind of went on that journey, and my two child life specialists, I had one in radiation and one in oncology, and they both are actually alum from Wheelock, which is now BU Wheelock. And so they were able to reach out to the school when I was applying, and I let them know that I was applying, and they were huge supporters of me in pursuing this career and helping me achieve my goals. And it's been so rewarding. I've had so many volunteer experiences where I've gotten to work with kids, and without even saying anything, I have a special connection to all of them because I understand what it's like to be on that other side, and kind of thinking about the things that helped me and what made me feel supported and comfortable, being able to provide that to other kids and other families. And I just feel that I have such a unique perspective, having been through it myself, having seen my parents and my sister. So I've gotten really to observe the experience in totality for a family and what going through hospitalization and illness is like. So yeah, it's amazing. I am just so excited to pursue this career. I finished my last day of my first semester yesterday, which was very exciting. But yeah, child life was just like a bright light for me in my journey. And so my hope is that I can be someone who provides that same bright light to other kids and families.
I think the challenge is, sorry, great, Caitlin. You got an A. Good job.
Thanks, Al.
I think the money is so tight everywhere. And so Mass General had a very robust program. There are a lot of other hospitals that don't. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of oncologists that are really, into all the data and the treatment, and they don't realize, sadly, some do, they don't realize how important this piece is. Yeah. So if there's any extra money laying around at the Chordoma Foundation, maybe we could start some more, get some more funding for child life programs in the pediatric world, around the country.
It is a huge need. And now, I'm getting to look into the developmental theory that is behind the child life profession, how this is supported by research and studies. that it's so important to meet these needs that are very, very oftentimes met by the rest of the healthcare team, but they're not trained to meet those needs in the same way that child life specialists are. Like, so many of my nurses were huge like points of social support for me, and they offered me so much support to my psychosocial health. But they're aside from the child life specialist and social work as well, is kind of tied into that same realm of like someone who's dedicated to the psychosocial health and well-being of the child, not just the child, but also the family, because it impacts the family just as much as it impacts the child. So I think it's an amazing profession, and it has so much value. And it's great to see that it's getting so much more support, and more child life specialists are coming into hospitals every single day. So it's very encouraging to see the direction in which the profession is taking.
That's really well put, Caitlin. With just a few minutes left, I have about 20 other questions, but I want to make sure others get the
We could do it
chance to
again
ask as well. That'd
to.
be great, part two.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to jump in with questions?
Yeah,
Chris, go ahead.
Sorry, I missed the beginning because I was stuck in a meeting that went long, but I'm just so impressed by your perspective on things. And I just texted Josh, is there a way we could get Caitlin to come work for the Cordoma Foundation
Setting up
build
great
this
child life programs?
Yeah, no, really. I mean, if you're really seriously thinking about how do you scale this type of work, I don't know that trying to do that at individual institutions or even on a one-on-one basis is ever going to get as much impact as you could by reaching across institutions and trying to leverage money that doesn't necessarily come from these standard approaches like you get at a big hospital. So yeah. I just wanted to float that there for you to think about a little bit.
Well,
because it really, I think your energy is exactly the kind of like light that we need, because it brings excitement for the research too. It gives people hope, and it's exactly the kind of energy we want.
Yeah, that's kind of like my whole perspective on this was like, you have to let go of the things you can't control and focus on the things you can. And the biggest thing you can control in this whole experience is your positivity, your optimism, your mental state, because everything else you have no control over. You can't control the treatments that you're getting. You can't control how your life is just crumbling apart in front of you, but you can control how you respond to that. And so that's something I really took upon myself. I'm sure you guys can tell I'm a bit of a go-getter. I'm kind of like, okay, like, I'm going to take the lead on this one. So for me, like my thing that I got to take control of was being really positive and trying to just, move forward as much as I can. Of course, like I had, like my parents said, I had the really rough days, the really just like heartbreaking, deep down in a hole days, but like picking myself back up from that and moving forward after letting myself feel those things, just trying to always move towards positivity and optimism.
I think too, the word hope is so important, because if you take that out of anyone's treatment, is just devastating. And we've had experiences here at Phoenix Children's with some friends who've dealt with doctors that just the things that come out of their mouths, you're just flabbergasted at, like, how could you be telling a child this? What would possess you to even use those words? And I get it, you have to be realistic, but you also, like, I think throughout the whole thing for me, hope was the word, and faith, obviously, that kept me going. And you just remain hopeful, and you have to keep that to your patients, and like to give that to Cordoma patients too. Like, I think the Cordoma Foundation gives hope to people because it gives them support and information that they need to treat their loved one or themselves or whatever it is. So that's a very important word in my life.
Lori.
I have a question, but it's not a Cordoma question.
Oh.
I hope you don't mind. I'm a board member. I'm Sue, and I missed the beginning too. So this has just been delightful to listen and to watch you and your positivity. You are inspiring, and I will second what Chris says anytime. Mark and Laurie, as well as a mum of a college age daughter and a son that's just graduated from college. It's incredible. I can't even imagine what you guys have gone through. So thank you for sharing your story. I do have a question, Caitlin, because you said that one of the things you wanted to do was to travel around Europe afterwards, and you did. And I'd love to know where you went and what did you do?
Yeah, of course. So the trip started in Italy, which I was a few days late to because I was just taking a break. My doctors were like a little hesitant about the whole thing to begin with. So I was a few days late.
So were your parents.
Yeah. Well,
with a chess port in heading off to foreign lands.
Yeah, which, ended up getting a little dicey there for a bit, but it's okay. So I went to Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and France, where unfortunately the travels ended because I got a fever while I was there and had to fly home from Paris, which I didn't get to see much of, but that's okay. But I actually ended up going on a hike in Switzerland, which probably not the best idea, but I was like, I need to go on this hike. I need to see this waterfall. I'm in the Swiss Alps. I have to go. So I went on this like 2-mile hike. At that point, I'm 5'10", so I'm pretty tall. I'm like 115 pounds at that point, like have not done any exercise. And I'm just going on this 2-mile hike, taking like pauses every 5 seconds, but it was the most breathtaking and beautiful thing I've ever seen. It is probably what gave me the fever that sent me home, but I would do it again because it was the most incredible thing ever. And to do it all with all my classmates who had all been so supportive through my entire experience. They were all lifting me up. I came around the corner actually, because we got lost, of course, on the hike because we're at the far end. And I came around the corner and all my classmates were there under the waterfall and everyone is screaming. They're all cheering for me. They can't believe I made it. And I start crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe that this is my life and that this is happening right now. But it was such an amazing experience. And I was so grateful. And I actually got to study abroad as well during college. I went to Barcelona, Spain for a few months. It was during COVID, so that ended early as well. But it was amazing. And it was really great. It was one of those moments where I was like, I got to live every day to the fullest. So I've got to go on this trip and see these places and have these experiences.
Wasn't the waterfall was that Gimmelwald?
In Gimmelwald, yeah.
So glad you got to do that, Caitlin. All right.
It aged me 25 years, just so you know, everyone.
Calling my parents
child that has going in Europe. Oh my God. Just anyway.
Trying to communicate. I have my parents on speakerphone trying to talk to this French doctor who does not speak English, and we're just trying to figure out what to do. It took 8 hours to get my port access. It was crazy, but it was worth it. It was all fun.
I know we only have a few minutes, or actually overtime by a minute, but I want to thank you all for having us here today and everything that you guys do to try and help people cope with this. And from the medical side, like I see little things here and there, but I don't know of any foundation that works as hard trying to find a cure for this. So I really appreciate all the researchers.
Caitlin, Mark, and Lori, I'm David. I'm on the board. I just want to thank you so sincerely for joining us today. It was really interesting and really helpful. And I suppose this is even just more a comment for the group at large. Your story, Caitlin, just like is such an important reminder. And one of the things we work on is to try to identify and help patients to get to the right clinical team. And it's your story, I mean, just exemplifies this so much. I mean, you've done so well, and your parents and you talk so much about finding the right doctors and really getting the right care. But Mark, it's just fascinating to me of like, you're a radiologist who has some really advanced training, and even from your perspective, there were challenges along the way. And so it exemplifies your story, how tricky and hard this is for everyone, but still the importance and how really hard it is to even identify and find patients and get the word out even to physicians about really, the need and the best treatment options that are constantly evolving and nuanced. But I share that with the group of like, your story just exemplifies for me the importance of continuing that work and doubling down where we can to really try to reach both patients, families, and physician researchers in order to try to make sure that everyone has the type of outcome that you did, Caitlin, which is just so fantastic. So just thank you for sharing that perspective, because it was just hugely helpful for me. And I think it really kind of connects a lot of our work.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, David. And also with that too, because we were lucky because our neuro-oncologist here at Phoenix Children was so willing to work with Dr. Leach. I know that some people, not Cornoma people, that they've gone to different hospitals and they are not, some doctors aren't as willing to actually do that. I mean, I would hope so, because chordoma is so rare, they would need that guidance, but you'd be surprised what some doctors are reluctant to do. So we got really lucky.
And I think about that a lot too as well. Like, how would my journey have been different if I didn't have my dad, who was in appointments translating words for my mom and I as we're sitting there, and they're like saying these chemotherapies to us that sound like foreign languages. And he's there to support us through that, as well as his connections to the medical field and helping get me the best care that I could, which has given me, as we can see, the best chance of survival still being here today. So I always think too about those families who don't have that connection, and how important it is to support them and provide them with their best chance as well. It's, not their fault. No one in their family is a doctor, like we don't choose the families that we're born into. And I was just fortunate to have a dad who had those connections. So I think it's important to try and give everyone that best chance as well.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. The letters behind my name allowed me to cold call so many people around the country and get in where other people cannot. And if I was, a manager at a store, I'm not sure we'd all be still sitting here today, with Caitlin. So I feel very fortunate. Now the question is, how do you get the average person, like David was talking about, early treatment and get to the right people, as early as you possibly can?
Yeah, it's a perpetual challenge. I mean, I think, to Shannon and Andrea's credit, and to our Sarah and now Kimberly, I mean, it's something we're just constantly striving for. I think at some point, most patients and family members in the United States get to us. Just if you look at the numbers of predicted new patients compared to the number of patients that we have in our database, at some point they're getting to us. We have a lot of work to do overseas. And we have a lot of work to do to reach patients earlier in their journey when, they're at such a critical juncture. So I'm thankful we have some just tremendous energy and bright minds working on that. And certainly any ideas that you all have. I mean, I think one area that's untapped is, patients are showing up in medical centers across the country. It's social workers, it's child life specialists, it's nurses who might be spending the most time with patients. Doctors might be very busy. It might not think to refer to them to the Chordoma Foundation, or might not think to make the connection. But perhaps by connecting with kind of more allied health providers. Yeah. So that's something we've been thinking about and exploring. Shannon's going to the oncology social workers society meeting next year. So
that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I would say, like, in my experience and in my studies that I've been doing, like, those are absolutely the team members who are going to be providing those resources to families, because part of the child life profession is going out into the community and finding resources to help support children and families. So even like while we're having this conversation, I'm thinking like, okay, so like I'm in my job, whatever unit I'm on, like it'll be important for me to connect to oncology and to let them know, like, hey, if you ever have any patients with chordoma, which I'm sure you've never heard of, but if you ever hear it again, this is this resource that you can provide to families.
Well, please keep the ideas coming. This is a big part of why we have these calls. In addition to, being inspired, I think it's just really important for us to, continue to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of like the actual experience and the wide variety of experiences that people are having. So you all, I think used the word fortunate a number of times, and I think it takes kind of a special kind of person to kind of think of oneself as fortunate having dealt with chordoma. But we never want to meet others who have dealt with this, and obviously we'd rather not know you. We'd rather you have never come into our orbit, but certainly do feel fortunate to have connected and to, given the circumstances, to have you as a part of this team, and very much, Caitlin, look forward to continuing to cheer you on, and maybe at some point convincing you to join us in some way.
Yeah,
so we should
like
about that.
Goodness. I mean, I'm happy to be connected and helpful in any way that I can, and you never know where things will take you. So
truly.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Mark, Lori, Caitlin. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for coming and your thoughtful questions as usual. This has been great, and we look forward to more of these conversations next year.
Sounds
Yeah,
great.
thank you guys so much
Absolutely.
for having us. I'm so grateful to have been able to share everything with you guys.